You are listening to the Keeping It Juicy podcast.
Your main squeeze in nutrition.
Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon on YouTube so you can get notified every Tuesday when we upload a new episode.
You can also add us on Facebook and Instagram at Keeping It Juicy Podcast. Welcome to episode 39, where we're both feeling pretty sunny side up today. And if you know what that means, we're probably going to talk about eggs. And they're not going to be scrambled. So.
Okay. Interesting intro there. But okay.
Thank you. I am the arty. It's been a fun evening today. So, before we actually go into eggs, let's talk about the new nutrition in the news, which, I mean, to me, it's not the new nutrition in the news, but apparently, according to this article, it fucking is. It is called the Fast and Feast Diet. What does that mean, you ask? That means the alternate day fasting. So basically, they're rebranding intermittent fasting. So, as the name implies, you starve yourself by fasting one day, and then you feast the next, and you repeat the pattern again. So, actually, in this article, which we'll attach in the show notes, they talk about a study that was a month-long trial of this alternate day fasting. So the study looks at volunteers that basically went through this diet, and they had apparently lost more than 7 pounds. And this weight loss occurred even though people on the ADF diet ate about 30% more on the days that they were allowed to eat than they normally would. So even with that extra food on feast days, the study volunteers still consume fewer calories overall because of their fasting days. The researchers, that's what they're really talking about here. So despite these positive findings, as the article points out, the researchers aren't going to recommend this because the long-term effects are not known, which, as we know of all diets, none of the long-term effects are known. Even a registered dietitian, her name's Samantha Heller from NYU Langone Health in New York City, said that although people lost weight, a diet where you fast every other day would be super difficult to maintain. And I stand by her. That's very difficult to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with the job that I work at, I would not be able to do that. I'm stressed all the time.
Yeah, so, I wouldn't be able to focus on anything.
Right. And I'm just tired of diets being rebranded to things that it shouldn't be. And the results are always the same. More studies need to be shown because we don't know the long-term effect.
Right.
So, yes, I said it with that voice to emphasize, but you get my drift.
Yeah. I mean, different diets are going to always be rebranded over and over and over and recycled. And that's kind of what this episode is about too, with the whole controversy on eggs. Kind of jumping into that now. We all know that at one point eggs were bad and then they were good, but then sometimes they're bad. WTF? Seriously.
Stay away from all foods.
They're all bad. Just stay away.
Just breathe air. You'll be fine. Oh shit! No, you'll oxidize.
That was a diet. that was the Beyonce diet. Hold up. Yeah, it's nonsense. So let's dive into the history of eggs. And the chicken egg, as we know of it today, is thought to have come from birds that our ancestors domesticated, which came from wild jungle fowl that were native to Southeast Asia and India. And this was around 7500 BC. So the chickens that we know now, have basically been bred to be the chickens that we domesticated. They weren't actually a breed of birds back then too, if that makes sense.
Who knows? Maybe they flew back then. I'm kidding. Don't listen to me.
Who knows anymore? So even the ancient Egyptians were thought to eat or, have eggs in their like cities and stuff, because in their hieroglyphics, they had servants actually carrying ostrich eggs. So this was considered to be like an offering. Even ancient Roman times, it's thought that they, had eggs in their dishes as well. So eggs are one of the absolute and most like long-standing controversies in nutrition, and that's pretty much all thanks to something called dietary cholesterol. So one large egg yolk has 186 milligrams of cholesterol, making it one of the highest or richest sources of cholesterol out there. So that's kind of why it gets that reputation, which then leads into the, okay, well, what's the deal with cholesterol debate? So in 1977, the government started recommending low-fat, low-cholesterol diets because research at that time indicated that dietary or elevated dietary cholesterol made you overindulgent and an unhealthy person. So the dietary guidelines at that point were recommending low cholesterol. So that's kind of when all the like advertisements coming out about eggs are bad, that's kind of when it really started to gain traction. But then in 2013, the American Heart Association announced that limiting dietary cholesterol didn't lower a person's LDL cholesterol after all, changing this official stance. And it's like from 1977 to 2013, it was about time that, statements had been kind of revisited. And then the 2015 dietary guidelines followed that kind of new guideline and said that cholesterol or dietary cholesterol was not a nutrient of concern for overconsumption. And that was the 2015 to 2020 guidelines, so we're still in that guideline. Mm-hmm. And then in a 2018 meta-analysis that was in the Nutrients Journal, it went further, stating that saturated fat had actually been responsible all along for the elevated LDL cholesterol, which would make you more at risk for heart disease. So eggs just have 1 gram of saturated fat, and then the eggs were back in favor. But in March,
oh my God,
this is a roller coaster ride, I know. But then in March 2019, the Journal of American Medical Association flipped this viewpoint again, concluding that just 1 egg a day is significantly linked to higher heart disease after all.
Then I'm fucked.
Moving on. So the issue is that both of these studies actually were kind of based on legitimate nutrition research, which raises the question, how is it possible that, nutrition experts, doctors, dietitians, and all researchers alike disagree so often when it comes to nutrition? How can you study the same question but come up with completely different answers? And how do we even make sense of any of it?
It's just gonna keep flipping flopping. Like it's gonna be the same fucking advice for time and time again. Literally everything in moderation. Like it's really so stupid to single out a certain food. Like nutritionally, it's really hard. Like everything in moderation. If we start talking about ethical issues, then that's a whole other subject in itself. I'm just really tired of this. Well, eggs are bad, so you definitely shouldn't eat it. You should probably have this like marbled steak from Longhorn Steakhouse instead. It's way better for you. I mean, like I know those people. That's why I'm already frustrated. So, why is there so much confusion? So first off, data collection is flawed. So there is this 2019 JAMA study. So researchers analyzed data from 6 previous studies for a total of 29,615 adults that were monitored for an average of 17 and a half years. All these studies use self-reported baseline diet data, meaning subjects recorded what they ate on a daily or weekly basis at the start of the study. Researchers then drew conclusions based on the assumption that subjects ate roughly this way every day for the remainder of the study. You already see a problem here?
Right.
So there are, of course, some major issues here. It's a stretch to assume that someone's eating habits will stay the same over the course of several years or decades. That's just silly. People tend to misrepresent what they eat, anyways. Self reported diet data is more times than not, they're going to have some errors. People do not report what they eat accurately because they don't remember, they don't know how to judge portion sizes, they don't know the ingredients, and they don't want to admit to snacking the way that they do. Unfortunately, the majority of nutritional studies rely on self-reported data, which is not even true in just a general study. It's also true on a day-to-day basis in my job right now. So
Yeah.
in an ideal world, there would be controlled feeding studies where researchers prepared every single meal and know exactly what subjects are eating at all times. These do exist, but they're time intensive and they're very expensive. Realistically, they can only be used for a short term, smaller studies, which can't assess the long term chronic disease risk and are too small to be applicable to the general population. I mean, there's just so many factors into a study that you have to take into consideration.
Right. So that is pretty much why the research is just so controversial because it's hard to replicate and create kind of the ideal or get a good idea of the diets that these people had. All they can make is these, conclusions.
Yeah.
So another issue about why these results are so mixed and whatnot is, like you mentioned before, when a study sets out to evaluate a single nutrient, like dietary cholesterol, for example, it's almost like virtually impossible to know for sure that the cholesterol is causing an effect on its own. So nutrients do not act alone, and I think this is a point that gets missed so often. And the presence of one nutrient can impact the presence of another nutrient. Another one, for example, calcium and vitamin D status, those are, they affect each other. Another example is like eating a lot of fiber can have a positive effect on heart disease, while eating a lot of saturated fat has a likely negative influence. So it would be hard to study the effects of either of these nutrients in someone who eats a fiber-rich diet that has whole grains and vegetables, but also eats a lot of saturated fat like red meat and things like that. So it's just nutrients don't act alone, so it's hard to identify which one is causing or doing what.
Culprit.
Yeah, and usually it's not just one culprit. So even if scientists could engineer single nutrient foods and measure and track these foods with precision, the research would still be super complicated simply from the fact that food is only one of the factors that impact overall health. We know some of the other factors are exercise, sleep, stress, lots of other factors, relationship stress, job stress, that affect your health beyond just nutrition.
The circadian rhythm.
Sleep. But when we do studies on nutrition, we're just looking at nutrition. So sometimes these other factors get skimmed over or not even tested for in general. Right. So, for example, someone who is eating eggs for breakfast every day but also has a crazy, super stressful job and never gets more than 6 hours of sleep, this person very well could have heart issues down the road, but it is impossible to say that eggs were the culprit.
And on top of all of that, everyone's needs are different. I mean, I'm not going to be the first to tell you. We all already knew this. So let me just say, for example, every 5 years, the U.S. Department of Agriculture and Health and Human Services release a set of dietary guidelines. And this examines the existing body of research to determine which eating pattern is the most healthy and the most health promoting for most people that fits the general public. So it's the closest thing that we have to consensus on a perfect diet. Of course, perfect is subjective. But these guidelines, which currently recommend limiting your sugar intake, eating plenty of plants, and getting at least part of your protein intake from eggs, are generalized public health advice and won't necessarily work for everyone. Our bodies all react differently to various foods. Dietary cholesterol is among one of them, and we're all going to have varying degrees of tolerance towards dietary cholesterol, and this is based on genetics or chronic diseases like diabetes as well. Blood work is the only way to find out how you individually might be impacted by eggs. So dietary cholesterol is fine for most people in moderate amounts, about an egg or two a day. So contradictory nutrition information and science isn't going anywhere, nor are the debates about eggs or that endless Instagram posts about low-fat versus low-carb diets. But that doesn't mean you should live by that general nutrition advice.
Exactly. So your body can give you a lot of great information if you just listen to it. So take fiber, for example, like if you don't eat enough, you'll likely feel kind of sluggish, possibly constipated. This is a signal that you need to eat more fiber in the forms of whole foods. The same goes for sugar. It's fine to eat it, but if you eat too much, you might feel lethargic, get some crashes, things like that. So instead of trying to keep up with all of this like nutrition science and information out there, just pay attention to how food makes your body feel. Listen to that, and you'll likely end up eating in a much better way that supports good health for you. And if you do,
I was about to say, unless you're one of those people that are like, I can't eat carrots. I just don't feel good. Like it's not healthy for me. I have those patients too.
But if you do have chronic health problems that you suspect are related to a certain food, a more personalized approach may help you kind of solve this. So definitely talk to a dietitian about these symptoms and work through them together. And this will include like blood work, allergy tests, other diagnostic tools to figure out what dietary change would be best for you. You. Just you.
Me? Me?
You.
Oh, okay.
And whatever you do, like we see the headlines, but try to ignore them. They're usually just like fluff. So
all the news is fluff. All news, all they want is attention.
Yeah.
That's
so unfortunately, eggs kind of got the short end of the stick. They still do. You know, they're good, they're bad, they're this, they're that, and it's just how do they make you feel? Eat them in moderation if you feel fine.
If you feel fine.
If you feel fine.
Yeah. It's okay.
If you like them, go for it.
Yeah. Maybe not eating like 12 a day would be great, but...
Right.
Like I said.
But who knows? You need blood tests. You need all this stuff. You need a health history report. Like, you need more info before you make generalized, like, blanket statements about foods and specific nutrients.
Yeah, you just can't change your dietary habits at the whiff of a headline. That just makes
Please don't.
That makes no sense. That's like saying keto diet. Oh, okay. I better cut out all the carbs right now.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
So ignore the headlines and don't take it too seriously. So with that, we will close out with our social media shout out for the week. It goes to at Holistic RDN. So thank you for following us and your support. She is an RD. She's plant-based and she is a houseplant enthusiast. So I thoroughly enjoy all of your houseplant pictures because I consider myself a houseplant enthusiast as well.
I think I'm close enough. I have 2 plants. That's still alive.
And they look pretty good.
Thank you. I do appreciate that.
I think I have 57.
Okay.
I can count later though.
I think that's more than just an enthusiast.
Okay, but thank you for listening. Thank you for your support, and we will catch you guys in the next episode.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the Keeping It Juicy podcast.
You mean squeeze in nutrition.
Don't forget to subscribe so you can join us every Tuesday for a brand new episode.
Also, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Keeping It Juicy Podcast.
We'd love to hear from you, so please leave us a review.
5 stars, no less.
On whatever platform you're listening to, or send us an email at keepingitjuicypodcast@gmail.com.
Or if you have any topics you'd like for us to touch upon, shoot us an email. Until next time, don't do anything that I wouldn't do. Okay. What kind of food should you eat to increase your vision?
Seafood.
No! What kind of lettuce was served on the Titanic?
Iceberg.
Where the fuck do you get these?
Smart fool.
One of a few times, okay. I'm kidding. What do cats call mice on skateboards? Meals on wheels.
Ah, shit.